thanks. You've come back to me. I'm not exactly sure what's happening next. I'm waiting. I'm waiting to find out.
I think I'm next.
Okay, great. It's yours.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry, Michele, I was confused.
No worries, Simone. And thanks for that nice preview of the masterclass. I'm definitely attending. I hope I can get a discount. But anyway, so as I said, I'm Michele Zanini. I'm the co-founder of the M Lab and co-author with Gary Hamel, from whom you heard yesterday, of a new book called Humanocracy. And I wanted to welcome you to what I am sure will be a very inspiring and very practical discussion around a fundamental ingredient for building truly adaptable organizations. And that ingredient is minimizing, or even better, eliminating the distance between employees and their customers or their users. And we have an amazing panel of deep thinkers and experienced practitioners. But before introducing them, let me maybe take a few minutes to set the stage. So as I am sure is no surprise to you, we live in an age of upheaval. We have big threats to contend with, the COVID crisis being the most vivid and immediate, as well as a bunch of opportunities, such as the Internet of Things, as we've heard about earlier today and even yesterday. And I am confident that most of you won't be surprised by the assertion that in these very uncertain times, industry incumbents are very slow to respond to these challenges and opportunities. Today we expect newcomers to beat the geezers, right? And we see this time and again across multiple sectors and geographies. And I know my time is limited, but I wanted to share two clear cases of corporate inertia from just the last couple of weeks. So the first is from Walmart. They've just announced in the US Walmart Plus, which promises to give expedited delivery for online orders and other perks for a low fee of $90 a year. So this is their response to Amazon Prime, which launched 15 years ago, not 15 months ago, 15 years ago, okay? That's how long it took them to get to match what Amazon has been doing. And the second one, just I think from yesterday, comes from GM. They've now fully committed to developing their own electrical vehicle drive systems. And that's nearly a decade after Tesla started manufacturing these at scale, right? So I guess late is better than never, but still, right? So these are just some of the latest reminders that the world is becoming more turbulent faster than most companies are becoming more adaptable. And we think, if you read our book and you follow our writing, we think that the culprit for this widespread institutional inertia is bureaucracy, which is the operating system still running most organizations around the world. And its authoritarian power structures, suffocating rules, and toxic politicking. In a bureaucracy, those who have the greatest amount of interaction with the customer have the least amount of influence on meeting their needs. And those at the top of the pyramid who hold the reins of power are insulated from the markets and from the customer by layers of managers and are too often stuck to old paradigms of how the industry works and what the customer needs that might have been, the right thing at the time when they got, rose to the top of the organization years ago, but are no longer applicable. So by the time an issue is big enough and unavoidable enough to attract the scarce attention of the CEO, the organization is already playing defense. And it's therefore no surprise that so many large organizations, GM, Walmart, and many others are just so slow at intercepting the future. Now, thankfully, as you've heard over the last several sessions, there are alternatives to the status quo, and Hire is arguably the most ambitious, the most radical. And over the last several years, Hire has been on a quest to build a company with zero distance between employees and customers. And to that end, it's divided the organization into thousands of micro enterprises that can rapidly sense and respond to market shifts. And as I'm sure it's been made abundantly clear based on all that you've heard so far, Hire is more of a self-organizing network than a formal hierarchy. And it really shows the kind of power that can be unleashed when you turn every employee into a customer-obsessed entrepreneur. So in this session, what we'll do is first unpack the key attributes of Hire's zero-distance model, and we will then also distill the lessons learned by organizations that have embarked on similar journeys, including GE Appliances, the newly minted winner of the Zero Distance Award. So congrats, Kevin. And e-commerce pioneer Zappos. So we're lucky to have a great group of panelists to help us do this. So let me introduce them right now. So the first speaker is Donna Zohar. Donna studied physics and philosophy at MIT and then did her postgrad work at Harvard. She is currently the professor of quantum philosophy at Zhejiang University in China and a guest professor at Tsinghua University School of Management as well. Donna is the author of the best-selling book, The Quantum Self, and also the best-selling book, The Quantum Society, which, as you'll hear from her soon, extend the language and principles of quantum physics into a new understanding of human consciousness, psychology, and social organization. Next up will be William Malik, a strategist of Stanford University and author of the excellent book, Executing Your Strategy, How to Break It Down and Get It Done. William has worked with many startups as well as giants like Boeing, Cisco, and Qualcomm. And as one of the most senior lecturers at Stanford University, William helped design and teach award-winning courses such as transforming strategy into action, not including. And our third panelist is Kevin Nolan. He's the president and CEO of GEA, one of the leading appliance makers in the US and a hire company since 2016. Over the last few years, Kevin has been leading the charge to transform the 12,500 employee organization into a hotbed of entrepreneurship. And as he will tell you, generating a ton of success in the marketplace. And our final panel member is John Bunch. John has been a longtime advisor to Tony Hsieh, the recently retired CEO of legendary retailer Zappos. John has led the transition at Zappos from traditional hierarchy to holacracy, which, as many of you know, provides a flexible organizational structure that moves autonomy to teams and individuals, pushing it down to the periphery of the organization. And coming out of the rollout of holacracy, John has been the driving force behind Zappos' entry into market-based dynamics, and he'll explain what that means. But it's essentially about harnessing the power of markets and turning every Zapponian into an entrepreneur. So each speaker will talk for about 10 minutes. And so we should have then time to wrap up in about an hour. So as you follow along, please type your questions using the Q&A feature that Zoom provides. I'll be following those along and we'll tee those up at the end to our panel. So with that housekeeping and introduction aside, it's time to get going with our first panelist, and I'll turn the floor over to Danah. Please, Danah.
Hello, everybody. Ni hao to Chairman Zhang, if you're listening. I'm very glad to be with you all today. As Michelle just said, I studied quantum physics at MIT, but I have in fact been fascinated by quantum physics since I was 13 years old. It's really been the central driving passion of my life and my work. And I have originated something called the theory of quantum management. My most recent book on that subject was The Quantum Leader, and I'm now writing a new book to be called Zero Distance about Rendan Yohe as the ideal management model for implementing quantum management theory. Gary mentioned yesterday that when scientists began to discover quantum physics, they had to rethink all the assumptions they'd had from Newtonian physics. And Gary also was making the analogy that management similarly must reject all of its assumptions from Taylorism and adopt new assumptions that are more appropriate to today. Quantum management theory goes a little bit further than that in saying that the assumptions we should adopt are framed by the principles of quantum physics itself. The reason I argue this is that Newtonian physics wasn't just a new physics, but it was the foundation of an entirely new paradigm for thinking in a different Newtonian way about absolutely everything: psychology, sociology, economics, and management. And Taylorian management was in fact inspired by and based on the principles of Newtonian physics. So what I'm saying with quantum management theory is that we do the same. We rethink absolutely everything in psychology, sociology, economics, etc., and management, and that the new principles we adopt are from the new paradigm defined by the principles of quantum physics. I argue in all my work that the Taylorian organization, like everything else in the Newtonian age, was designed for simplicity, order, law-abiding systems, things that were predictable. And we all know that today we live in an age of rapid change, uncertainty, global interconnectedness, complexity. Things are not simple anymore. And quantum physics is actually a physics that emerged to handle a universe that was now seen to be this way: complex, uncertain, unpredictable. And the universe that quantum physics describes is in fact an autopoietic universe. So it seems very fitting that if you're going to apply the principles, looking for principles to operate organizations that are autopoietic today, these quantum principles would be appropriate. The COVID crisis brought to a head all these problems that business is now having to face today because of the change of paradigms in which it's operating. And Haier and GEA, and I think Zappos, all thrived during the COVID crisis when many other companies got into great difficulty, failed even, some of them. And I argue that that is because Haier with Rendon Yoi and then GEA adopted the principles of quantum management in Rendon Yoi. Until Mr. Zhang designed Rendon Yoi, quantum management was just a theory. Haier was the first company fully to implement every principle of this theory. A holography like Zappos has implemented some of the principles. Indeed, you will find some of the principles in the movements about agile companies, flat companies, holacracies, even humanocracies that Gary and Michelle write about. But Rendon Yoi implements every one of them. So I think that Haier has been the first large organization in the world to adopt the quantum management paradigm and fully implement it in the Rendon Yoi business model. And that's what I want to quickly outline here, how Haier has done that. Why I say that Haier is a quantum company and a model company for others to follow that are trying to adapt to the challenges of the quantum age. Michelle, can you put up my chart? Or can somebody put up my chart? Well,
It's coming, Donna. It's coming.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, there we are. So I'll run through it quickly with you. One other thing I want to say, many of you this morning discussed how there are lots of big questions still to be answered. And one thing that quantum management theory tries to do, because it is a paradigm, not just a management model, is address those big questions. So that, for instance, when people like Gary and Michelle talk about getting the full potential of human beings and employees, quantum management steps back one stage and says, well, let's look in this new paradigm. What is a human being? What is a person? What is an employee? And how do individual employees relate to their teams and their companies, etc.? So being a paradigm rather than just a model, it does try to go into the big questions. And the quantum self, which is the last thing on my chart, is an instance of that, because the quantum self is an attempt to redefine the person as being both particle-like and wave-like, both an individual and a member of the team. And the quantum individual has infinite potential, which at higher is the model that you work with the notion that the employees all have infinite potential. Quantum physics is also about indeterminacy and spontaneity, and Rendon-Yoy implements this with agility and a responsive structure. Quantum physics says things are both wave-like and particle-like. At higher, each ME is both independent and particle-like, and yet all MEs cooperate and collaborate, which is wave-like. Quantum physics says that everything is a superposition of multiple potentialities, and at higher, each of the 4,000 MEs is one expression of a potentiality. So it is a company that has multiple potentialities, all working simultaneously. Quantum physics says the universe is made of relationships, everything is entangled with everything. At higher, employees are entangled with users, there's zero distance. Higher is an ecosystem, both internally and externally, and now it has the new ecosystem brand. In quantum physics, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle says that questions evoke reality. The Rendon-Yoy culture is a culture of questions, self-criticism, and constant dependence on user feedback. Quantum physics says that the observer and the observed are co-creative. In Rendon-Yoy, employees and users are co-creative. And finally, quantum physics says everything is contextual. Context creates identity. And in Rendon-Yoy, the user needs determine the products and the services. So higher and Rendon-Yoy meet every single criterion of being a quantum company. And I think that other companies can look to it as an ideal model for how they too can thrive in the quantum age. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danah.